Thanks, Aapresid, for giving me the opportunity of having this subject to discuss. I don't know whether any of you were with Fernando Latancia and Juan Insua. They talked about grass stock and grass measurements. We're going to take a step further into the system and the forage resource, the annual green or the perennial green, and it's clearer what we want, more quality, more persistence, and other characteristics, but there will be another actor. It's the animal. If I separate the animal, and my purpose is also to choose the animal's genetic value, but Herman and Martin and myself will place the animal on top of the forage resource and ask ourselves, what's our goal when we have those two actors interacting? People may say, I want more production per hectare, meat or milk or whatever. So what's the precision we want? An extra step there. All of us have worked at some feedlot and efficiency is the first thing we need to measure. In grass systems, it's not easy to measure, but that is the step we need to take. If you are hearing us, and an extra step in that objective and this grassland and the animals, also understanding, and you will hear this in some other presentations, the ecosystemic service the animal is giving me by grazing that forage resource. In this specific presentation, Martin and Germán will share knowledge and experience in decision making so as to have more productivity, animal per hectare, more conversion efficiency. So the criteria for each resource coming in or getting out, the animal burden, we need to take into account, and also that this is very nice, but people are behind this. And how staff training, farm training, what we need to have in place to manage grass. Germán Verone from INTA Balcarce, the School of Agricultural Sciences of Mar del Plata. He's an agricultural engineer. He has a PhD from the München University. And then Martin Villarde from the Argento company, who has been working in the research and development department, quite experienced on this regard. So Germán will take the floor first.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por estar acá. Gracias por la invitación.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here with Martin, with whom we are sharing many things.
Espero que no se aburran con la charla.
You will not find anything new, I believe. Two very good presentations were given in another room about stocking density, the way to monitor, and I'm going to talk about something else, things that are associated with this. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is many a time we forget things that define the turnover for a company. Agricultural engineering is what we do on a day-to-day basis, putting a system in place, plan when I buy, when I sell, whether I'll stop the stocks, distribution of ponds, the use of resources, the environment management when my resources grow, monitoring stock, monitoring pasture. These things are relevant in a system. Grazing management associated to the time to bring the animals in and out with pasture systems. They have many different names. All those things are more or less the same, as good or as bad as each other. And if we did not find a solution for the upper part of the slide, we will not be saved. We will not have a guru coming over to sell a formulation to manage grazing if we don't have a stepwise procedure sorted out. The upper part of the slide. Let me share with you the relevance of bringing a system into order. This is a long-term at the Balcarce stock system. It was designed in 1960-something. There were no computers, no AI, and it has worked till 1 year ago, or is still in operation, I don't really know. Look at the variability of rain between 600 and 1300. And well, let's talk about the governments that have been there. This reserve 6 system is it's no magic there. The forage resources are well defined, where the ponds are, where the services are. This produces between 50 and 250 kilograms of meat per hectare per year. There are more technified farmers between 150 and 170. For you to know the relevance of the different factors, this is a company that does delivery of many things. We are 1 day away of sorting out the national cattle breeding problem for 29,000 Argentinian pesos. There's just 5 books left. So what is the key for a good production and management? You need to put things in order. Fernando was just saying animal production is grass harvested per times the efficiency of that grass. And what happens in the wet and the humid and semi-humid pampas? 65 to 80% of production is between October and March, and it fluctuates more or less between 5,000 and 12,000 kilograms of grass between fescue and alfalfa. Those are the grass varieties. That is between 5,000 and 12,000 liters of milk, and between 300 and 800 kilograms of beef per hectare. So I chose these 3 subjects: exit in winter, grazing management in spring and summer, as something that seems to be relevant, excess spring production harvesting. Let me share with you something that we have been doing for 3 years. We're simulating what happens with a forage resource, in this case fescue, which is overgrazed. You know those fields that you go along the road and you see cows at houses' backyards between July and September? The grass does not grow. It's this high. That is what we call overgrazing, that red thing up there on the slide. And we always tell people, come on, take your cows away, give them a roll per 60 days, 45 days, you do your math. And people tell me, what you give me in exchange, because they are my animals, eat for free. So we had this experience a couple of years ago. We started comparing a patch that is overgrazed at this time of the year and another one that would be well managed. We give the animals a roll so that the grass will not be so short. So they don't pay attention too much to the full line, but if we do a good management by mid-October, we have between 2,000 and 2,500 kilograms accumulated with or without fertilization. The difference between two green lines is the one on top is with fertilizer. The two red ones, even when you apply fertilization, they are very low. That is overgrazed. And it's the best time of the year, the time when there's a lot of pasture in spring, when service starts in cow-calf operations. In spring, we have grass per animal at the time of service, but we do not have a structure, the height. And so we do have grass for animals, but sometimes we don't have a good harvest per animal. And the animal has been suffering in winter, and they find a large area, but the structure is poor. And so that explains, I believe, low pregnancies, and there is time for reservation. We cannot sell cheap meat to the slaughterhouse. That includes lack of forage on the plots. And what Fernando said, we need to check stock, not to let it go down, that average number. Have a check on remnants, because you need to keep a close eye there. Well, every year, all year long, but that is more intensive. Monitoring would be very good to find the time when there is a scale in growth rate in spring. That graph shows consumption of 3 calves, purple line 18 kilograms per hectare, 3 calves, each one 6-7 kilograms. And what you have 2 plots, could be 2 years, and the dotted line, the white dots, by the end of July, beginning of August, matches growth, and no supplement is required, and that is not the case with the other line. You see this if you monitor. And Balcarce, we looked at the monitoring frequency. There was an advisor who did it every 7 days at that time of the year, between July and September, and another one who did it every 30 days. And the difference was that the two of them obtained more or less the same animal production, but one used 5 times more supplementation. That is why we do monitoring of the stocks. So this is spring, and let me tell you some things about pasture management associated to conversion efficiency, grass into animal product. And I'm going to talk to you about the results of experiments conducted at INTA Villegas mostly, and module follow-up at INTA Balcarce. Let's talk about alfalfa. What we've learned from a series of experiences, actually 4 or 5 tests, is that we need to stop using 10% flowering for management. It's good for us, not good for pasture management. You use height to monitor and as a guideline to define when we come in, when we get out. It is easier to measure. It gives you an idea of the amount of grass. If it's higher, it's more. If it's lower, there is less. It is directly associated to nutrition, much height, less quality, less height, more quality. 10% says nothing. So what height should alfalfa have when you get in with the animals? Not more than 40 centimeters. In 40 centimeters, you have the highest individual consumption rate. There's a guy there, 40 centimeters. It's my knee height. Maybe Leo's ankle or Ginobile's ankle. Those are 40 centimeters. But now, if we leave in a tour and stop in each patch, well, alfalfa must be 5 centimeters. being so hot, I thought this was December. But anyway, but if we conduct a transect in spring and get into each patch to see the height of alfalfa with animals inside, well, much more than that.
The other thing we learned in those experiments is that the first time around, we said spring before, so now it's 5 centimeters. If I come to an alfalfa field and I want to know if it's been well managed, it has to be between 30 and 40 if the animals are there, and between 5 and 10 if they are going out. If I'm going in with 40, it is 15, and I went in with 60, they will be thin. If 15 to 40, they should be good. So if they go out with 5, they are right in the middle. If I measure everything, the average would be 20, 22. If I do the same thing next week and the average is 22, and the ones that came in with 40 and go out with 5, everything is okay. But now, after August 15, here spring is kind of beginning. So we need to monitor ball eyeing even. But those 5 centimeters will increase, and by the time they are 20, we'll lose control of them because of too much water on the terrain. So the last plot with 40, and if you accommodate with that first time around, you'll be okay. If you do that, instead of using a 10%, you'll have a gain of 300 to 1 kilos per animal per day. 3% in spring, 4% in summer when there's more heat. Assigning 3 or 4% of live weight if you're measuring grass on top of your fist, not from the level of the soil surface. We learned that doing this, we go around much faster. You use the resource before. You have more stocking density, you have more weight gain, and you're using the resource beforehand. So you increase your production by 30%. Beef production, it's a lot, 30% increase of beef. If you don't have a stocking density, you reserve it for the summertime, or for fall, or for winter, when the stock goes down. The grass stock goes down. Your system that was established as a hierarchy, you need to use it. You use your reserves because you will need them in the fall. What about fescue? What have we learned? What are our results at Balcarce and Pergamino INTA stations? If we want to go around with festuca, you have to plant leaves and count leaves, and complement with height in order to manage grazing. If we say height, 15 to 22 centimeters height, 2-3 leaves of the fescue plant. Higher, no good. And whatever is left, 5 to 12 in height. If I change my density, I'll have less response from the animal. If I, change my density, I may also change the animal response. Another thing that is key, and I'm talking of fescue and alfalfa because they are the most frequent plants in our region, and because we have more information regarding them. Avoid the growth of the stem, the development of the stem that is controlling blooming. Now, wild oats now are
Un poco más tarde, en ese momento del año, hay que evitar que eso pase.
What is growing right now is going faster, increasing the stocking density, with bromus, and the rest I wait and make it into a stocking. I can have 900 grams of gain if I control flowering and pastures between 15 and 20 centimeters. I do that in spring and summertime, not so much over fall and winter. But it's not all the same. Monitoring is not the same as not monitoring. Going in with 20 is not the same as having 30 centimeters in height. Those plots should not be grazed. They have to be used as a reserve. It looks like monitoring stock requires checking how much grass there is in every plot. This is an exercise that has a lot of potential to estimate when to close your plot. You need to estimate your demand for the time when you start needing your reserve, October, November. By way of an example, I have 150 cows. In October, November, I will have my 150 grazing over 60 hectares of alfalfa, 20 of alfalfa, or fescue, whatever. It's just an example. So I have 2.5 animals per hectare. And those cows consume approximately 14 kilos. Therefore, I have a harvester that can't harvest over 35 kilos per hectare per day in my animal, right? So we all know how many cows we have and what resources we have if we have everything down pat. But then we need to work on our offer as well for that time of the year. That was demand. And now, what's the offer? Do we know how much grass we will have in October, November? That's more difficult. If we monitor everything, then we can have historic data of our resources. It's history, but it's better than having nothing at all. We can ask an agency, what the figures were. Historically, the INTA, for example, has their own reports. They are organized by region, but if you'd like to know what your plot is doing, you can write an email to INTA, and we will give you a tool that will allow you to understand what may go on in your own field. We don't know everything, but we can go inspect and get an idea. You can also use applications that simulate grass growth. This is an application we developed with INTA projects when we were at college. This is grass management. That's the name it goes by. You can look it up in your Android, only Android. It's for free, and you don't need to have internet to use it. In the middle of the field, no connection, you can use it. I think, and it's not because we developed it, I think it's a great tool. It asks you for some information, certain pieces of information, but it's not that many. And the information it produces is pretty good, reliable. You can measure the height of your grasses, etc., and then an estimate is produced. Quite a good one. So, after all of the above, suppose your growth will be 60 kilos per hectare per day for November. So, you work it out. If I can harvest 35 and it grows 60, then I have 42% extra area. But that's now. How do I make it happen? How do I execute? Well, October, November, I monitor every 14, 15 days how high my grass is. And if it's alfalfa, I will realize whether the average height that was supposed to be 20, then next week 25, and then 30, I'm not getting there because it's growing more than my consumption capacity. So it goes to reserve. How do I solve this? Well, different ways, but the key to this is doing every 2 weeks, every single month, week in, week out. We have a pasturometer at INTA, and you're welcome to come and see how it works. I'm just about finished. So, how to execute this in October, November? Suppose I measured my stock, my grass stock, 600 kilos mid-October. And I had calculated a consumption of 35 kilos a day. So I have 30 days, 31 in October, but say 30 times 35, I am going to eat 1,350 kilos. If I have 600, it's 1,350 will be a negative value for me. But if the value is 60 at the end of October, it'll be 1,850. 1,050. So now I have information that's closer to reality. I have soil information. What does the meteorology service say? Is it October? Is it going to be a hot month? Warmer than last October, so I can find that information with the meteorology people and calculate a little bit better. If it grows to a certain height, it'll say it'll be 600, and then I will have 750. So the idea is, if I have an I can harvest grass and keep it. So you need to think of the forage reserve strategy so as to not waste what grows out there almost for free. In the summertime, temperature goes up. Those who can go on vacation go to the seaside, but our fields are still productive. So this curve by Jauregui et al. Represents that the average temperature being between 30-35 degrees, the plant grows by zero, negative growth. That is, it's great for the plant to have these temperatures. So in dry summers, in very warm summers, you have to be careful with your leftovers, because the plant gets colder by circulating water through its tissues. If there's no water to be circulated in the plant tissue, they will be burnt. You know, the fluid going through the plant refrigerates, cools down the plant. If that doesn't happen, all of the buds will die and my pastures will be gone. So if I can't control my stock, my leftovers will mean no stock for the following summer. So it's better to have higher leftovers in summertime, obviously always depending on where we are. If we are in the north of Entre Rios, maybe not grazing would be a choice in the summertime and allow the plant to cool down and then have pastures the next year. So stocking in Entre Rios needs to be carefully organized. If you're in the province of Buenos Aires, maybe you can be a little bit more lenient because the climate is milder. So in the center of Buenos Aires, maybe not so. Maybe it's more like what happens in Entre Rios. And in southern Buenos Aires, your risk goes down because it's not as warm, or the temperature stress period is shorter there. Thank you very much.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It is an honor and a pleasure to share with Herman. We have very nice discussions, the good discussions, as he said. We work hand in hand, and we share a lot of philosophy as well. Part of what we were shown by Herman and Fernando and Juan. Let's not forget that the countryside is a factory, and there are inputs coming in and outputs going out. And the difference with a regular factory, it's at an open field factory, so we need to keep on monitoring the inputs, water and temperature, which we don't manage. So these inputs are beyond what we can manage in any factory system. Those who are here, I was touching the wrong button, I'm sorry. Those who do agriculture here, please raise your hand. Those who do seeding control, and you want to do it on September the 20th at this depth, at this distance between plants, such a fertilization. Those who do this by controlling all these variables, raise your hands, please. Almost all the room. Okay. Who do regular monitoring of their crops? Soybean every week, they go control and check insects, conditions. Please raise your hands if you do this. Almost all the room. Okay. And who do harvest control? Yield, losses? Again, most of the room. I'm going to ask, so cattle breeding people here who are engaged in precisely the dates, the height, the distance of plants in that crop. A bit less. Who do weekly or every other week control weeds, bugs, and crops? Oh, less hands. And who do harvest control, loss and efficiency, looking at the yield of forage in each grazing system throughout the year? Few hands were left up. This reminds me what we saw with the hands is what typically happens. I don't know whether you've read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll was a fantastic scientist who at a certain point in time got this concoction, and such as the inspector of the Pink Panther did. The inspector was with Dodo, his assistant, and they go to a lab which belonged to Dr. Jekyll, and Dodo drinks the magic concoction created by Dr. Jekyll and becomes a monster. In the real world, it happens that the agriculture would precision agriculture, variable seeding and fertilizations, all the checks and control, species for this environment, for that environment. And when we look at cattle breeding, you drink your breakfast, you have your breakfast, you become the monster who does not do all these controls of seeding throughout the year, don't monitor their crops, don't measure their harvests. If we want to have the same results doing things differently, it will be hard. So it's key. If you want to have very professional and productive cattle breeding, we need to follow the same processes as agriculture farms and do precision architecture. Let me explain some philosophy first, or let me show you. Before looking at the animals, we should look at the soil, at the plants that we want to have, how to do it. There is a cause and an excuse not to be as good in agriculture as in cattle breeding. 35 years ago, John Hay from New Zealand told me, he came to the country and said, what's the difference between Argentina and New Zealand in grass production? There, everything is green. They have stress burdens, stocking 5 animals per hectare, very high productions of grass, animals, milk. And what's the difference between the two countries? It's not the language. When the conquerors came here, there were millions of hectares with grass. So we just worried about the animals. When the colonizers went to New Zealand, it was volcanic, soil very poor, no grass, no animals allowed. What did they do? They improved the soil, then improved the grass, then they improved the animals. So they did things right. And so we're focusing on the animals, and we have this defect. Let's go back in the time tunnel. 100 years ago. I'm sure that agriculture is different, but if we look at the country's routes and we go south or north, and we will see that most of the countryside is still managed the way they were managed 100 years ago. So as Herman said, we have 100 kilograms of beef per hectare, where the maximum amounts are over 1,000. So the gap is huge because we don't do processes the way we do it in agriculture. This is any field. This is a lower land vis-a-vis other fields with permanent agriculture, many animals eating well, and on the other side, cows, horses, sheep, yellow, no photosynthesis, lack of control. We're not using light, we're not using water, there's no growth. With the same resources, you can see the difference between the two sides of the fence. And so, some concrete actual examples. These are real data put on a graph. Few inputs, few seeds, poor quality, lack of fertilization, 5,000 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, and they produce 200 kilograms of beef per hectare. And that is better than the average that is 70 or 100 kilograms. But his neighbor does things better. 1,200 kilograms of dry matter vis-a-vis his neighbor's 5,000. They have twice the amount of meat just by doing things better. And if we look at a better management, not using 50 but 70% of grass, with a better quality, we get to alfalfa with 30, 40 centimeters of height, grain seeds also better, and so we get over 800 kilograms of beef per hectare. We're working at Reserve 7 intensive module with over 1,000 kilograms of beef per hectare, and nothing calls your attention. It's just doing your homework. There's nothing outstanding there. And in New Zealand, you will not see anything strange. All the process is well conducted. The thing is to do things right. And this is to show you what you see in the field. I want to show this slide because this is a large patch in La Paz, Entre Rios. This is the limit of the temperate area, a complicated area actually. If we look at this picture, people are taking me along the road, and we see on the left-hand side pasture. If you see fescue and alfalfa, and on the right-hand side you don't see alfalfa. That is summertime. And the next patch you can see with alfalfa and the other one without fescue. The same pasture with 3 different managements. And so it became 3 different pastures on the same area, 100-hectare plot, and you can see how management is key and the impact it may have on the resources we have. This is, you see the genetic improvement factors, the sheep at the back, continuous frequent grass, making use of all the grass, and what Herman said. What happens if we overdo it with grass? And then when there's grazing, look at the plot. Yellowish, we lost a lot of structures, and since September till November, almost 25%, and at the end of the summer, 50%. Thin, less persistent because of spring management. Look at the tiller. You need to eat grass well. This is naked soil in summer, 58 degrees, and if we have cover, that same soil is less than 30. So not just having the radiation of the plants with water circulation, but the cover that prevents everything under being cooked up. So we need to be very careful with the cover throughout the year. So we saw that cattle is important, soil and grass are very important, but everything has to be managed by people, trained and actually into it. Over 10 years ago, we were at a conference, top of the art, and a question came up: who in the last 15 days have moved the animals? And the last week, who did that? Most of those here, and I didn't do it myself, we didn't move the animals. So this knowledge needs to reach people. And we saw that it was not reaching people. This is what Germán said, what Fernando said before, and also Insua. This needs to get to people out there in the field moving the animals. And we have created the Shepherd School. There are some trainings that are extremely good. And we train people, and we're quite happy. But as we said with Leandro before, this does not have continuity through time, a long time. Because when you make these changes, you need to create new habits. It's not that you go to the gym today and feel good, and if you don't go regularly, you will not grow your muscle. Habits need to be kept on with time. It needs to be focused there. The owner, the person in charge, staff, fields that are doing well is where the 3 legs are into it. So we believe that the next jump is to be trained and to pay attention to what we're doing. In the example I told you about 200 or 800 kilograms of meat, 200 includes a gross input of $600, and then you have to count everything else. And in the 800 is 2,400 per hectare. The difference is huge. Or the 1,200 kilograms of meat per hectare, there's over 1,000 kilogram difference for good grass management.
So we would have a capacity to have somebody there, a hand, to manage grasses. This is one of the most important factors in animal production. Pastures is implantation of the plants, nutrition for your pastures, management, the harvest. All of this is essential. So this is how we manage our harvest. Why do we do so? Because this is just like harvesting other crops. We need to manage our resources. It's not just grazing. It goes all the way around. So Fernando talked about this, and so did Juan. And let me repeat There's agreement in what we have said, but we need to focus on having an average stock in my field, dry matter, height, as Herman was saying, having my goal in sight. If I see the grass grows up and my stock goes up, the grass is higher than what my animals will eat, I will have an excess. So reserve from the end of August and onwards. And the opposite, from the beginning of winter, fall, winter, they will eat more than my grass grows, so my stock will fall. So I need to have my reserves. If it's less than 3 centimeters, it's like a cemetery, and my animals will die for lack of pasture. So we don't want that for our systems. We need to manufacture, quote unquote, as much grass as possible and put it into their mouths, to the animals' mouths. So how do I need where I'm standing? Measuring somehow, ideally looking for more accurate systems. Juan was talking about sophisticated systems, but it's better to measure and make a mistake and then correct than just not measuring. There's different measuring systems to measure your grass. There's eyeballing it, of course, but if I train my eye and then I cut my grass and I know how much grass I have, that information will allow me to measure and calibrate. Any method that I apply, destructive or non-destructive, will be good. But the key is measuring all the time to know where we stand. And then there's grass measuring curves, old curves, and this is what you see. This is ryegrass annual measurements. This is a specific area measuring different fields in that area throughout the year. The black is an average with this grow rate for ryegrass in the area of, say, 100 kilometers to 200 kilometers from Buenos Aires. Now, then you see another curve that is almost double as much. So if I follow the blue curve, in the winter time it produced half as much. Last year it was half the size of the average. Until the end of September, half as much. If I just guide myself with my sheet that says that it will be so many kilos per day, that won't be any good for me because there are changes. This is Mediterranean pastures. Mid-year, then springs go up. Winter is less variable, but there's still variability. This info is from El Jabalí fields, dairy fields in Carlos Casares, and this is people who've been measuring grass for over 20 years. This shows a good year on the left, pure fescue or pure alfalfa producing almost the same amount. Humid years, wet years in the middle, and then on the right, drier years, alfalfa grows better than fescue. So if I believe in the average, I will not be doing the right thing. In the average, those who are shorter drown. So the average is no good. We need to work our fine measurements to be on the safe side. So what do they do at El Jabalí? What have they done for the last 20 years? Each little square here represents a hectare and the grass in that hectare. Every week for the last 20 years, they've been measuring. They have measured the grass, basically eyeballing it every 15 days, and then they go out in the field to do that. And with that info, they prepared this diagram. 1 hectare, it's 1,400 kilometers of dry. And this is the average of that field every week for the last 20 years. That's why the previous graphs or diagrams are no good. You need all of this information to be on the safe side. So the key is doing this in an ongoing basis. I believe in people who do things right, the right way. There are people out there who do things the right way. I know. What do they do? Periodic touring in order to understand availability in each plot and the daily growth rate in each hectare, as well as what is the average stock figure. For about 10 years, we have collaborated with this publication. The publication shows that with a periodic touring of the plot, maybe in the wintertime a little bit less frequently because grass grows less, but then I tour what I need to measure, and then I have a comparison from week to week. I will know what kind of grass I have, how much is grown, and what to do with my animals in the near future, and then how much leftover I will have. That is essential because it's my factory for the future. If resprouting, regrowing is no good, then I'll be in trouble. So these 3 points, the touring, the rotation, and the leftovers, are non-negotiable. They have to be there. You have to make sure you have them down pat. He was asking for a piece of information, but believe me, he says now, Santiago Farinha had a Fontagro project going on in Uruguay. No. It has to be before that, 2021 maybe. They started checking on how to improve the fields, improving productivity. I will show you one particular field we were working on with INTA between Balcarce and Tandil. 300 kilos of beef in early breeding. We were producing okay for early breeding. But then as of 2021, with more periodic tourings or per courses, we moved from 300 odd kilos of beef to 470 kilos of beef, simply because we managed our grasses much better. So see how important it is to measure. So you measure your stock, your grass stock, the growth rate, how much can be taken care of by animals, and then you keep going. But what surprises me the most is that in one of the fields, back in 2021 maybe, and I think it's before 21, but anyway, this field entered the Fontagro project back in 21, and they measured every week. They would measure the grass, and the stock was 1947. Then later it was growth rate of 24. And so the stock was 1,868, and then the gold was starting with 2,500 and leaving with 1,500. So if I was speaking in New Zealand or elsewhere, I would realize how important it is to measure in an ongoing fashion, everybody on the same page. In Castelli, Los Riojanos field, the people have been trained. They know what to do with their pastures, but there's 2 times in the year that are non-negotiable as to measuring grass. In the month of April, when you go in, if I go in slowly, I will fall for sure. If I go in faster, my water, I will get through my water. But if it's at the end of August, end of winter, we can start calculating my future reserves. Another dairy field, different resources measured every week, measuring each resource. Then you trace this general diagram of the field. This is the average of the previous curve, the amount of grass available, the stock. On the top right, there's a period where, because of green covers, you go through the winter town. If I don't want my stock to go up, I need to know how much my animals are going to eat and what is going to be left over. Each one of the plottings in the field, I know how much grass there is in each plot. The yellow or orange line is if it's 35 kilos of dry matter, that plot is taken off the system. That will be reserves in October. And 26 days after, I have the same silage. After the silage, this is the pasture amount that I have. It's like going to the baker's every day, buying old bread, stale bread. And in wrapping up, the problem is not targeting and not making it, but targeting low and making it. If you want to do something, you'll find the way. If you don't want to do anything, you will find an excuse. Thank you.
There are a number of questions. We have to sort of speed up for time constraints. An extra 10 minutes. Come on. There are 3 questions that we'll ask. Herman, 2 interesting questions. One is this height management, 30-40 centimeters in pasture with fescue and clover and alfalfa. And the other question is, how do you deal with that management with bloating control? And no one can make sure there's more bloating in a system managed the way I did, that with 10% flowering. In all the experiments that were conducted, typically they used balls or blood spreading or something special. There were a couple of experiments where nothing was used to control and there was no more evidence of bloating. If you start that management, there is less bloating, and pasture managed the way I said, rather than the ones that I leave to flower in. And then when I change the plot, there's some animals that don't eat because the grass were way over the right time, and so agricultural engineers and vets do control, monitoring, and fasting needs to be taken care of very well. When I change the plot, sometimes it seems that grass is there and I want them to eat it all and it to be neat and tidy, and we need to think of the animal as an average. I mean, maybe there are animals that are not eating. It would be good, now that there's a lot of technology, to be able to relate. I don't know whether we can relate with bloating and deal with the animal number, to see whether those bloated animals did not eat the day before. Like kids that are shy and go to a birthday party and they don't eat. The only thing they eat is the cake at the end. They don't eat any salty thing or savory thing because they're shy and they just eat the cake. And animals is not one cow. They're social animals. Some don't eat, and sometimes changing the plot needs to be done before. Hierarchies, that is also important, rather than having animals die. And prevent if you are afraid. I know that I'm talking too much, but if you are afraid and don't have trained people to manage alfalfa at that level, maybe you should use another resource, because there will be bloating with 10% with other type of management. Height. Always associated pastures, there's one that is the ruling one. If alfalfa prevails, I will use it as my benchmark, especially between October and March when alfalfa grows. If fescue is prevailing because alfalfa has deteriorated, it's a fescue-based pasture rather than alfalfa-based pasture. So I need to see the one that I get the most forage from. If it is fescue and clover, the height is fescue. I don't have any other answer. Combinations. Plants eat light, so it's not good to have one being in the shade of another one. And so we need to prevent overshading so that one makes another one to disappear. But the one that offers the most forage is the one that prevails or needs to prevail. Martin, to wrap up, there are a number of questions, but people can talk to him when he leaves. But Martin, one of the questions is about success stories with grass management. What schedule the company has, and who are trained, and who leads grass management? First of all, I will give you a philosophical answer rather than technical answer. One of the people that know the most about grass was Colin Holmes. I think you will agree, Herman, and milk management and pasture. He himself measured every week grass at the dairy farms he worked in, giving the relevance to measurement. He thought it was a focus to put his feet on the ground, knowing what was going on, making decisions with real data. So that's a philosophical answer. You have middle management or senior management doing that everywhere. We did this, and one farm that was quite successful was in the hands of someone who had not finished his elementary school. After my tour, we were talking for hours, and he was so knowledgeable. You don't need an MBA to do this. But people who need to make decisions have to be involved with grass. All the plots were measured, over 1,000 cattle breeding hectares when animals came in and left each plot. That was needed to understand the system. But the shepherd is a key person. They need to be there. Thank you very much. This is it. Thank you.